All summer long, and really even going back to the spring, I've been insisting, based on information from the inside, that you weren't going to see Brian Rust and Ricard Raquel get moved, that you weren't going to see the big blow-it-all-to-kingdom-come wave of trades that so many seem to have been forecasting or anticipating. But also, all through that, there was one that I did anticipate they'd make, and they haven't. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Erik Karlsson's still a good player. You can look at his flaws. You can accentuate those flaws if you choose. You can also go the other way and just single out whenever it is that he does something spectacular offensively. He's been that way all along. I would argue, and I have argued, that his time in Pittsburgh, from multiple perspectives, probably should be over. The team was disappointed in him. Kyle Dubas was outwardly disappointed in him. And Karlsson, in turn, was disappointed and has been through a lot of this, to be blunt with you, in having hoped that everything would go a lot better than it has, both from an individual and a team standpoint. Add into this the very large variable that Karlsson is due $11.5 million this year and $11.5 million next year before he becomes an unrestricted free agent at age 37. This is not an attractive arrangement for any team, much less one that's supposed to be building something back up at the other end of the spectrum. Also, and not to be lost in this, but you're bringing in a new head coach. And with that, presumably, new scheme, new attitude, a new commitment to certain characteristics of the game. Dan Muse hasn't given many clues in that regard, so we're going to have to wait till Cranberry to see what that looks like. But I don't think I'd be going out on a limb in suggesting, particularly since he's brought it up himself, that the team needs to be a lot better defensively. Well, Karlsson doesn't make you a lot better defensively. He doesn't make you any better defensively. Aside from his ability to be able to skate to a 50-50 puck and get there first and get it out, there's not a lot he's bringing you in your own end. So take all of that. Take everything that I just said, roll it up in a great big ball, smush it, and ask yourself, what are we doing here? What's actually being achieved by Karlsson still being with the Penguins? They don't want him here. He doesn't want to be here. You get the idea. Why is he still here? Well, that's not going to be an answer that's easily culled from anybody, least of all Dubas. But Dubas has stated on several occasions he really, really, really doesn't like doing money deals, meaning transactions that involve the Penguins paying a portion of a player's salary to go away, the Jack Johnson deal. This mostly has come up in relation to Tristan Jarry, because it had been seen as the only way for Jarry's contract to be moved. He still wouldn't do it. Jarry went to the minor leagues. He showed he was going to hang on to Jarry pretty much unconditionally. And Jarry's making less than half of what Karlsson is. So I don't have any precedent here upon which to base some speculation that Dubas could do that. However, I do have some math in my favor to at least propose something. As you and I are communicating this morning, the Penguins are sitting on $13,053,571 in cap space, according to the website Puckpedia. They're really good, by the way, really accurate with all kinds of different things. $13 million. That's what's there. If you look at what you would expect the Penguins camp roster to be, and all those guys they're going to bring in, it would be reasonable to conclude that they're either done or close to done. And people like me can keep pining for additional left-handed defense. It doesn't matter. We might not get our way. Those guys aren't just growing on trees. that Dubas can walk outside and grab one or two. Not this time of year. So, to bring up another question I've been posing consistently now for several weeks, what happens to this money? Where will this go? I get it that Fenway Sports Group is either selling all of the team or part of the team or something, but they're doing something to try to either get all the way out or part of the way out. Well, nothing about not spending that money, pardon the double negative, will help them in any sale. Devaluing your own product is like going around and trashing your own house on the day that people are coming to look at it. Doesn't make much sense, does it? So why not look at this unusual scenario? Why not look at this and say, listen, this is the one time that we have an opportunity to clean a couple of things off of our books for future seasons. If we don't spend the money now, we don't get to roll it over into next season the way they do in the NFL. It just vanishes. You lose the right to it. You don't lose the actual money, but you lose the right to spend it. You lose the cap space. Whereas if you think about trades that are made around the league on a regular basis, cap space is a commodity unto itself. It comes with its own value. You don't just let it fade away. So you could use it to clear out the remainder of the Karlsson contract. You could use it in other ways like that. Does it involve, taking a little bit of a pride hit? Yeah, I guess if it's a guy that you signed, and I think that's part of what motivated Dubas to hang on to Jari, because that was his contract. But I don't think that's really the case with Karlsson. That was part of a complex trade in which the Penguins sent a bunch of bad deals to San Jose, and then Montreal got involved, and the Penguins just happened to end up with Karlsson. They knew exactly what they were doing at the time, and I don't know that there's a whole lot of regret attached to it. Just worth thinking about. I really can't fathom entering the season and just frittering away $13 million in cap space. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Neil English, who says, DK, am I wrong for thinking that Harrison Brunick is not only one of the Penguins' best prospects, but already one of their best overall defensemen? Yes, Neil, you are wrong for thinking that. Respectfully here. I have to watch it with the way I speak of this kid, because it can get easily misconstrued. Whether or not you're basing your view on what I'm saying, it doesn't matter for this discussion. I can go over the top with this kid, or at least I can sound like I'm going over the top, because it won't be understood that I'm discussing who he is now and where I think he's headed. There's a big difference between that and the way you ended your question there, which is he already one of our best defensemen? Listen, I just talked a lot about Erik Karlsson. You can be his biggest critic and still acknowledge that he's got some game. You can be down about the full season that Chris Letang just had and still acknowledge that when he's on, he's really very good. So let's not go overboard here with this kid and where he is now. I really like what I've seen of Brunick to date, but when I've compared him to players from the recent past, I haven't talked about all-stars and Hall of Famers and stuff. I've talked about a young John Marino. The way Marino came into the league with the Penguins, where you saw there was someone who had a lot of poise, a lot of control, a terrific ability to close on a forward that crosses the Pittsburgh blue line and shut them down that way. And this is kind of an intangible, but a presence, especially on the back end. He just looks like one of those guys that you want controlling your team from the back. Now, Marino himself, as we would see in various different stops of his, didn't exactly erupt in some linear progression. He had his ups and downs. Maybe that'll be the case for Brunick, maybe it won't. Yesterday, there was additional clarity on the discussions that the NHL and the Canadian Hockey League, which is the compendium of all three of the Quebec, Western, and Ontario leagues. And it was semi-resolved that they're going to continue talking about this through the coming season. This exception that I cited yesterday for one 19-year-old per team to be allowed to be assigned to the AHL instead of forcing that player to go back to juniors for no reason. Well, for one reason, to try to prop up the junior system. My counter to that, and the reason that I called it a stupid rule, is that I just don't care about the Canadian feeder system. I don't see why the NHL has to partake in that. You can have feeder systems all over the place. Now, I did get some feedback about that. It seemed to be mostly from up north, not surprisingly. And I can appreciate that. But that's just the nature of the world. That's the free market. If the Canadian junior teams want to continue being as prevalent and as important as they've been in the past, they're going to have to adjust some things. The NHL doesn't need to do that for them. And on top of that, an NHL player doesn't need to do that for them. For all the feedback that I got about how important it is to have this feeder system, how important it is to have this talent that comes out of there, all I have to say back to that is, if you were really worried about the individual talent, you'd let the individual talent go wherever it is that they should be going. Brunick's not necessarily ready for the NHL, to continue making clear my stance here about him and not overblowing it. But there is no circumstance in which anyone could say that he isn't ready for the AHL. None whatsoever. That's the only part of this that should matter. If you're talking about bringing up young hockey players and having them become the best that they can be, then you're talking about the players, or in this case, about the player. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow.